What's Gen Z doing when it comes to sex that you think is good and positive compared to the previous generations?
Well, I think Gen Z is communicating more than previous generations. I think it's become more the norm to actually weigh in on your emotional intelligence and prioritize it as a skill that must be learned. It's not just something that would be cool to have. It's like for you to have self-awareness and for you to understand how to communicate with other people in an emotional way is really, really powerful. And I think that now vulnerability is also something that's coming out where it's like, real men are vulnerable. Like they're truthful, they're honest. It doesn't mean they cry to everybody. That was like a early on misconception, but I think Gen Z is getting that it's like, it's just being honest. It's like being upfront with who you are and being able to share how you're feeling and even talk to your guy friends when you're having a hard day and be able to admit that and share in that. And yeah, I'm hoping that those communication skills and that self-awareness just increases more and more. I think also the fact that not Gen Z doesn't drink alcohol as much as previous generations, which is really, really helpful, not only for sex performance, but also just for levels of anxiety going down overall. So I'm really hoping that keeps on that trend. I know for me, I've really enjoyed not feeling social pressure to drink anymore as I previously did. So that feels really good. Yeah. So I'd say that self-awareness and the value they see in communication skills is more there for Gen Z than previous generations.
You make a good point about the drinking because I still drink, but I tend to not drink more than a couple of drinks at a time. And if I'm out for a really long period of time, I'll just switch to something else. And before I started doing that, I thought that I would either become totally boring or feel self-conscious about it. But I realized there was actually a kind of quiet confidence about being sober in a situation when other people aren't sober. And with regards to openness about everything, about emotions, about mental health, you see that spilling over into sex as well. I think sex is still somewhat of the last taboo, especially when it comes to particular types of sex. But people like yourself and others on the internet are helping break those barriers down. So how would you define what being a sexologist is?
Being a sexologist is studying the sexual behavior of people. So it's basically having a clear idea of like, why are people thinking this way about sex? Why does it lead them to act this way when it comes to sex? And what are the main problems and issues people are dealing with when it comes to sex? And how can I coach them through those problems, right? As a sexologist. So it's mainly, based upon behavior and seeing patterns and trends, and how can we interrupt these trends with getting them in a direction they want to be going in when it comes to what their sex goals are, which is interesting because most people don't even know their sex goals. They just know they're struggling and they want to get out of the struggle. So yeah.
Yeah. You said sex schools?
Sex goals.
Oh, sex goals, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you've mostly focused on male clients, right?
Yeah. Yes. I work with heterosexual men who have challenges with women. Yeah.
Yeah. And before that, you told me over the phone that you were a relationship counselor before. Is that right?
Before this, before diving into sexology, I started as a relationship coach, and I still worked with men struggling with communicating with women. And I was really just more communication in relationships. And over, I think it was like 3 years of doing that, I went viral on Instagram, posting a sex piece, a piece of content. And my content started going crazy. And I was like, oh my God, like people really like the sex stuff. And more questions were being thrown at me, like, how do I solve my PE, my premature ejaculation? Or why do I have erectile dysfunction? Why can I never get to an orgasm with my wife? It's been 20 years. This is a problem. We might get divorced. And I was like, oh my God, like there's some crazy like sex related problems out there that like, are there not a lot of people helping with this? So I was opened up to this whole new world, which is funny because I've always wanted to be a sex therapist, like since a kid, but I would always tell myself like I was a teenager and I was like, that would be the coolest, craziest, like taboo job ever, but I could never do that. And then college, it came up again and I was like, oh, I could never, but that would be so cool and like so interesting. And then it like presented itself to me again at this point in time. And I was like, you know what, let me see if there's like a sexology school or something I could go to so I can learn all this stuff. And I joined within like a month of receiving that, you know, there's so many questions. And then I went right into school for it. So after that, I was like, oh my God, this is my thing. I have to do this. And that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I can see how passionate you are about it. What was your major in college?
Psychology.
Psychology. I kind of guessed it might have been. Yeah. I remember I did psychology in college, not as a major, but as, you know, I took side classes on it. And it was my favorite subject, really. It was the most fascinating subject for me.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I was going to ask, did you love it or think it was just bullshit?
No, I loved it. I loved it. And I found, you know, all the different studies that you would have to memorize. Even though on paper that might sound like a boring and arduous task, it was actually so easy to remember them because they felt like little pieces of my life that I'd experienced. Because you can relate the learnings so much to things that you experience. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so funny because people either think it's just like a bullshit topic where it's like, oh, I'll just take that as an elective. It's stupid. Or they'll like love it and either really enjoy the class or like find a passion. Cause I had so many people who were like, you're never going to use psych. Why are you wasting your college degree on psych? And I was like, I'm going to use it somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah. It seems to be a very popular degree at the moment, actually, a very popular major. I don't have any statistics. Yeah, I don't have any statistics on it, but anecdotally, when I talk to people, you know, even in my own family who are at college age now, they're doing psychology.
Interesting.
Yeah. But to me, it makes perfect sense because it's the study of human behavior. And there's nothing else that we all experience the same, like human behavior. You know, we're all into that topic.
Yeah. I think also there's so much confusion now around relationships. And like, since the Me Too movement, it's just brought about a lot of confusion for men, especially around like, who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to act? How do I not cross lines and like still get my message across, you know? And I do wonder like how much of those studying psychology are men. That would make
anecdotally, I think it's more women. I remember in my class, I was probably one of 2 men out of 17 women.
Oh, wow.
And then actually the other guy dropped out because he joined the army. So yeah, anecdotally more women, but I always found it very interesting.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to, you know, you mentioned the Me Too movement, I'm actually intrigued to get your perspective on this because what do you think genuinely has changed in terms of what is and isn't acceptable behavior from men versus unacceptable behavior that they could just get away with more before, but women were actually still uncomfortable with?
I think a big one is going in for a kiss on the first date.
Okay.
I feel like guys used to be so just confident doing that. And now it's like, when can I even touch her arm on a first date? You know, like there's a lot of hesitation around just confusion, like confusion around boundaries. And then there's some women who appreciate men like, you know, respecting
taking the lead
and like, and then there's also women who want men to take the lead still. So it's like, you don't know who you're turning on or off. Like, you don't know if you're turning her on or off. And it's like one or the other, but how do you know what type of woman it is and how she's going to perceive it? You can't just go in there as a guy and like take the lead with anything anymore, which used to be the case. It used to be like when it came to the bill, like you pay for the bill, especially in the first date. That was like a rule. And now it's like, no, like don't always do that. You know, maybe I would still personally, I would still encourage guys to pay for the first date, even if it's ice cream, but like,
yeah, I do.
But there's people who disagree with me, today. And so I think that's one, you know, the whole financially taking the lead and, you know, even using phrases like, I'll take care of you. That used to be really big and really like a turn on for a woman to hear, where now it's like, take care of me. I take care of myself. You know, you don't know what reaction you're going to get, even if you want to go in with this, like, it's, you know, it's with good intention. Even if it's with good intention, you don't know what it's going to be met with. So, you know, I have a lot of empathy for guys where it's like, oh man, that's like, it's tricky. It's like, you got to figure her out before the first date, but how do you do that? Because that's when you're first getting to know her. And then there's, I mean, I think when it comes to like catcalling and stuff
Sure.
like that, and being more like sexually, just sexual comments. And, I feel like women used to just put up with it. And now it's like not okay. Yeah. And yeah, I don't do too much research or anything on dating. Specifically, I'm more like the sex route, but
They're already past that stage by the time they come to you.
yeah. But still, like, I definitely, I know how I used to be treated even earlier. And it's hard to tell, because it's like, was it just because I was getting hit on a lot and I was going out a lot more, as it in my 20s, or, where it's like, men just approach me much more maturely if they do. It's like it's much more respectful. And I'm like, I don't remember men being like this, so yeah, it's just.
But do you appreciate the respectfulness?
I do.
Yeah.
Do. Yeah, I do. And I think there are times where, even with clients who are married, I'm like, she wants you to like take her, like she wants you to like take the lead on this, so I can get a read on certain clients and their relationships, and men being like, I don't want to I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I'm like, yeah, because you got to take the lead, so sometimes it's tricky, because there are these moments, even in marriage, where it's like, you got to step up and take the lead here. But it depends on the circumstance. So there's no longer like a rule of men do this and women do this. Men act this way and women act this way. I think now where that used to be the case in like, the 90s, it was like very enforced, like men and women do this and that. But now it's like, not so much. You got to be more emotionally intelligent to be able to understand what partner you're with and what they're looking for and what's acceptable for them and what's not, and what they like and what they don't like, So there's parts of my relationship with my boyfriend where I prefer some traditional, things within our relationship. Like, I like when he takes me out to dinner and he pays. Like, that's something that turns me on. It makes me feel like the woman in the relationship. Like, I'm not going to feel bad for feeling that way just because other women don't, but that's something he enjoys and I enjoy. So it's like, if we could both enjoy that type of relationship. And of course, there's things I do that are more traditional, but we both work. You just got to find what works for your relationship at this stage. And that means you have to be good at communicating. So I think that's the biggest thing that we all got to focus more on, is communication.
And I think when it comes to the early stages of dating, you're talking about, do I go in for the kiss at the end of the date? Do I pay? I think it's important for men to learn how to read a woman's body language and actually be in tune with her emotions, because I've been on first dates where, the first date, I won't go in for the kiss at the end of the date. And the other date, I've got my hand on her thigh before the appetizers even come, because I can tell there's an attraction or not. And it doesn't really matter how like physically attractive I find her. It could be completely the same, and the conversation could be the same, but you can just tell that there's a level of attraction and that she would be comfortable, and you also want to do that. I think sometimes men look at dating or look at short-term relationships as very much like a goal, and they're trying to do their fixed set of moves to get to the eventual goal, which is normally to sleep with her. And they don't navigate each individual woman and each individual date as its own experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what guys have to get better at, is just, being able to not only read her body, but ask her certain types of questions. Like, so what type, tell me what type of woman you are, even that like open-ended question, that's like a cool, interesting question to just ask on a first date. Like, how would she describe herself if she could put herself out there? Like, there's going to be a lot that comes from that question, so for men to get good at just asking questions right from the get-go. And also, like you said, it's kind of like the movie Hitch. Like, if she comes in 90%, like, you're pretty safe to say you can finish the 10%, like, she's like putting her face in front of you and she's touching your leg and she's like rubbing your thigh. Then you could touch her. You could touch hers, most likely. Right. Of course not, but there's a lot of messaging around like consent too. But when it comes to stuff like that, you're not going to say, can I put my hand on your leg?
Exactly. Yeah.
In the moment. So like the consent is, not always verbalized. It's in, hey, is she coming towards me? Let me take the lead in communication and then let her give me some physical signs that, we're good.
I think all this conversation around consent and Me Too, it's kind of made men and women expect that there is a very clear like playbook of, I'm going to ask for this and then we can do this and then she'll say this is okay. But reality is things don't work that way. Yeah. We're still very much animals who are doing these weird dances to try and impress each other and to try and form some kind of intimacy, but much of it is still very much unspoken, which I think is why it's important for men to take an interest in topics like sex and relationships so that they can understand what's going on before necessarily they've had a lot of personal experience with that.
Wait, repeat that last part.
So I was saying, sorry, I just need to drink of water there.
Very good.
For a young guy, perhaps who's like 18 and he's just entering the world of dating and going to college and having these experiences with women, he hasn't had, 15 dates over the past year that he can remember on a spectrum of, how interested was she in me? How far did we take things? How open was the communication? He's really got a blank slate. So I think it's important to be a student of relationships, of sex, and then you can have a better understanding before you go into those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I 100% agree. Like education and even, and I don't know, maybe we'll touch on this, but like even having experiences of mindful masturbation is really important for men so that they actually understand their body. Like instead of brainwashing their body and mind with porn, which happens pretty often. Then it gets to the point where guys are like, I don't know what I would really desire. I don't know what I like. I don't know what goes on in my head. And like, they just realize how empty their head is and how lacking they are in sex education because they just use porn as this constant guide, So that's another thing is like educate yourself by learning to ask open-ended questions. Like if I had to give advice, I just say, like, do some research, use ChatGPT, like, open-ended questions to ask on a date because I'm nervous about it. And here's the context, like you can really get some good advice there by just having 3 questions to go into a date with. And then also work on yourself and really understand yourself sexually as much as you can, because that's going to give you the confidence you need going into a sex relationship if you've never had sex with a woman yet,
It's funny because so many men these days are into self-improvement, which is great, and will read books on all these different topics, but something that's so important to every human is sex and relationships. And if you were to survey men, how many of them have got a sex book or a relationship book on their bookshelf? Pretty few, right?
Yeah, pretty few.
So just before we get into the meaty topics of sex and masturbation and porn and all of that, I wanted to ask you, you said you have a boyfriend now, but when you were dating and meeting men, if you told them you're a sexologist, what kind of reaction would you normally get from that?
Oh, man. It was either, overall intimidation.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
Intimidated by it. Yeah. So that was a bit of a challenge dating when I was, because my boyfriend and I have been together like 2 years. So,
okay.
It was either like and from like, if I just meet strangers and I'm introducing and I tell them that like at an event, a social event or whatever, someone will either be really, really interested or they'll ignore me. They'll be like, oh, and like, they'll either walk away physically or they will change the topic immediately. So it's like, I can tell who's comfortable and who's really intrigued or who's like, oh shit, get me out of here.
Yeah.
But yeah, with dating, it was just, I could feel like their intimidation and it wasn't fun. I think there were only like 2 guys who were like totally chill about it and actually interested. And I actually ended up helping one of them with erectile dysfunction, which is really interesting. And that was like really rewarding for the both of us. I mean, but yeah, overall it wasn't great.
Well, it's a good filter, really, though, because if immediately
Yeah.
they're intimidated by what you do and they can't talk about it, then you two probably aren't going to be compatible.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I loved about it, because I'm like, I could never be, it's not like I'm not going to tell them what I do. Like I will tell them date one, because that's like the best filter. Because I love what I do and I'm passionate about it. I'm not stopping. And that's why when my boyfriend, when we first started dating, he would get more excited than I was about it. He'd be like, oh, you should try this. And like, he has two businesses. So he would be like so into the business part of it and be like, wow, like you're so good. You could try this and you could try that. I love how passionate you are. So he loved how passionate I was about my work. So that's why I was like, yeah, he's definitely deeper.
Yeah. And how much of your business would you say is the content creation? How much of it is the one-on-one coaching? And then do you have anything else going on as well outside of that?
Yeah, I have, I actually am building an app right now. Cool. And it's called, so that's the main project, is Sex Meditations. So right now it's available right now, in the more simple form, which are meditations to help men. Either there's some that are jerk off instruction. Most are guidance around, hey, if you're struggling with sexual performance anxiety, for instance, like listen to this meditation and it will help you learn how to keep your body calm, something like that. So it's meditations to help men with different challenges of their sex lives. Some of them, like I said, are jerk off instructions. So it would be maybe like one meditation would be edging, and it would be taking them through an edging experience. So that's the main project. Then I have the one-on-one coaching, and then I'm making content on YouTube and Instagram primarily.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about jerking off. So I
want
to get your opinion on the NoFap movement and this re-stigmatization online that we see of masturbation.
I'm very pro masturbation. And what I see with most men is that NoFap is almost always connected to no masturbation in porn. It often, based on who I speak to about it, based on, everything that I've learned and researched and talked to men about, is that, yeah, well, I want to stop jerking off. And I'm like, do you want to stop jerking off, or do you want to stop jerking off to porn? And they're like, yeah, well, I want to stop watching porn. And I'm like, so which one is it more of, the porn or the jerking off? And it's almost always, I want to stop porn. And it was interesting. It has been interesting to me to see that in most men's minds, masturbation and porn are always the same. It's like you can't have one without the other, when really you can. And there's a healthy way to masturbate, which is mindful and is using your own brain to come up with your own visuals and connect with your body, and actually use it as time to spend creating pleasure and creating a strong body-mind connection of having control over your own pleasure, in which case that's a healthy thing. When you attach it to something that makes you feel like you lack control, that you're not educated properly, you feel like this thing's taking over your life, that's obviously a bad thing, but that's not masturbation, that's porn. So I encourage guys to not stop masturbating, because I don't think, most men are not just going to stop masturbating forever and then just give up on it forever. And that's why the NoFap is just this thing that comes and goes, because there's no clear goal. It's just like, stop jerking off for this amount of time. And then, you're good. Or I don't know. I actually, to be honest, I think NoFap can be a lifestyle, right?
It's a bit of a cult. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So it's like they try to really for the rest of their lives, just not, right?
Well, I don't know if it's lifelong, because it's so new, it's hard to say. And luckily I haven't. Guys
be like NoFap November, so I think some it's temporary, and for others it's long, maybe more cult-like. It's like they're trying to do it forever.
That's true. And obviously I don't know if they're factoring in having a sexual partner, because, if removing the porn, then the supposed reasons that some of the people do no FAP is semen retention, which obviously if you're having sex with a partner, then you're not going to get those benefits. So I don't quite know where they take it. I will be mean and say I think there's quite a big overlap between no FAP and not having and no girlfriend and no FAP. I think probably quite go hand in hand. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about unhealthy practices when it comes to masturbation and porn, and why they are so linked, and what exactly are men doing. You know, if somebody's listening to this and think, oh, wait a minute, this is actually what I do, this is my regular kind of habit that's actually unhealthy for them, how can they recognize those behaviors?
Well, a really common one is death grip. So there's a lot of men just squeezing too hard. And then they feel like they have to squeeze harder because of desensitization that comes from death grip. So they're actually over time damaging like nerve cells, which can lead to erectile dysfunction, and then even long-term erectile dysfunction that there's a hard, it's pretty tough to reverse. So I would say death grip is definitely something to steer away from, and to really use things like lube. Just try to use different types of like sensory, like for instance, like if you were to use a feather, or maybe something a little sharp that's scratchy. Like some guys like their balls like scratched, or their dick scratched. Like everyone has their own thing. Sometimes it's just a gentler touch where you're like cupping the head and only focusing on the head, like to explore yourself, by yourself, for yourself, to understand, like, if I was to just not use porn and I was to just try to get myself physically aroused, like, how can I try different methods of touch to do that? And I think that will help to find like where you like, what specific areas you really find pleasure in, what thoughts connect to those specific physical areas. And you can retrain your body to get off to a gentler touch. So there's definitely ways to do that. So be very mindful of squeezing too hard and using that death grip. I would say another thing is masturbating I'll just put it out. A specific way is prone masturbation, which can also lead to erectile dysfunction. And that is when a guy lays on the bed face down and like humps the bed, basically. Okay. So yeah, I've heard a lot of guys do this.
Really? Okay. And, this is new to me. Okay.
Yeah, I know. A lot of guys also have never heard of it, but I have one-on-one.
I know a lot of women do that, but not men.
Yeah. I didn't know that men did it either. And then I personally met someone who did it, who also struggled with ED. And I was like, could this be connected? And turns out it could cause damage because of the constant pressure you're putting in that certain position. And for long enough time, it does damage. Sure. So that's something to definitely not do every single time. I would say also just watching porn every single time, which a lot of men do. Like I said, a lot of men can't think of masturbation without porn. Like it's just this automatic connection. And they're like, well, I can't jerk off without porn. What am I going to think about? What am I going to do? And yeah, you got to come up with your own things to think about. You got to train your brain to understand, how can I get aroused based on what I can control? Because so many of these dick-related issues come from them not feeling in control of their body and not knowing what to think about. That's why guys gravitate towards like baseball or their grandma when they're trying to they don't know their bodies, because without porn, they don't know what to do or like how they'll react. So I would say definitely, even if you have a healthy relationship with porn, which I believe some people do, then still definitely don't do it every single time. Definitely have your times where, that's why I'm creating sex meditations, to get men to train themselves to not need porn and not rely on it. And if they don't rely on it, they won't feel like it's controlling them, and they won't have this, this problem with it. So yeah, that's definitely something that guys should do too, is try to step away from it. Even if you think you have a healthy relationship, just don't go there every single time.
Well, that's a test if you have a healthy relationship with it. If you can still enjoy without it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Something to be mindful of is that it won't be as enjoyable when you first stop. If you're so used to using porn and you go without it, you're going to feel like you need that dopamine high, like, oh, well, porn, it's so much easier. Like, obviously it's easier. Like you don't have to use your brain. You're just like, ugh.
Yeah, it's kind of like reading versus watching Netflix.
Exactly. Yeah. But then once you find a really good book, you're like, oh shit, I want to read another good book, and it's kind of I like that. It's kind of the same thing. So expect it to be a little more draining, I guess. Maybe not draining is the best word, but it takes more mental power to like, first of all, change a habit, and then for that habit to be using your mind instead of just like totally zoning out.
Yeah, well, I think the zoning out is a big part of the appeal for a lot of men, and it's something that you see in other behaviors that become addictive, like video gaming is when I'm doing this, I'm not thinking about anything else. And you'll hear from a lot of people who have problems with porn that they will log on. I say log on. I don't think people log into Pornhub, but they'll log on and they'll not notice like an hour passed.
Yeah.
So you mentioned briefly about this idea of mindful masturbation. Could you explain a little bit more about what that is and how people can achieve it?
Yeah. I mean, it's really like how it sounds, like using your own mind to think about, to first ask yourself, like, what am I really sexually attracted to? Like, what would really sexually excite me? Like if I could take even using porn to kind of help you out, like what are the porns I gravitate towards? And how can I create a more maybe realistic version of that in my mind? Like, what would that look like? And how would I look in this visual? Like, how would I come across to this woman? Like, what would the exchange look like? Like, what would I say? Like, what dirty talk would I use? What positions would I be in? It's actually imagining yourself having sex with a partner that's either a real partner, past partner, or even just a person you made up in your head, but you're creating the experience. And by you creating this visual experience, you're gaining confidence in yourself because you're like, okay, well, whenever this happens, your brain doesn't really know the difference between reality and imagination, right? That's why visualization is such a powerful tool. And have they shown in studies and how Olympians use it all the time to win. And there's power in it. So you're basically using it to train your body to understand what you get aroused to, what allows you to calm down too, right? Because if what I do with sex meditations, it's like, okay, touch yourself. And now if it's getting too much, what can you think about, in your visual to help you calm down? Like, okay, what would that look like? Would it look like you going down on her and taking a break from penetration? Would it look like you kissing her? Would it look like you telling her, okay, now you have to wait, in a more dominant way? Like, what can you do to dial it back? And it's kind of like teaching guys, you can speed it up, you can dial it back, you know how to react if something goes wrong. It's like giving them all the tools they need to feel confident instead of, like I said, just going to porn to rely on that and then be with a woman and have no idea what their body is going to do or how to control their body.
Yeah, visualization is such a powerful tool that men are using in other ways. Men who are interested in self-improvement, they're using it all the time. So they have this imaginative power. I just don't think they're applying it as much to something which I imagine is very important to them as well. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about
guys do without realizing it, because what you're saying is they use it in other ways, but not with sex. Yeah. They're using it with sex. They're just using it the wrong way with sex, because when guys have sex performance anxiety, what do? They think about the worst case scenario before having sex. And they do it right before having sex. Because I have clients that tell me this, they'll be like, right before we had sex, I was just thinking, oh, what if this happens? What if I do this? What if this happens? So it's like they are visualizing in a way. They're just doing it based on the things they don't want to happen, which is raising their heart rate, and they're having digestive issues now because they're freaking out and they don't know how to react to what's in front of them.
I wanted to ask you if you think that the accessibility and proliferation of porn has actually led to an increase of these issues in men.
I'm actually not sure.
I mean, I'm just asking your personal opinion. I'm sure there's data out there on that, but it seems to me that men of my generation have, I get ads all the time for like ED medication that you can buy online,
Mm,
and it seems to me like there seems to be a lot of young guys struggling with this, which typically was thought of as an older man's problem.
hmm
And it sounds like logically, it just seems like constant access to porn and very vivid visual images and being able to beat off all the time can only be a recipe for that. Because too much stimulation of one thing always causes a desensitization.
Yeah. I mean, even look at Instagram, like it's softcore porn, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
it. Like if you search, like you can find softcore porn. We're just so used to seeing women half naked or even almost fully naked, and even like women shaking their asses, and like Instagram posts, and guys are looking for that daily or following these women, to which they have those images in their head all day. And then, yeah, they're comparing those women to the women they go out with. So there's all these, comparison issues happening,
Mm-hmm.
due to social media. I wouldn't say social media is a bad thing, but if it's powerful. So if you use it in a way that's not helping you, it can really hurt you. And yeah, and I think there's, you know, it's tricky. Yeah, I was going to say something else and it blew my mind.
Well, there's a clear difference to me between you imagine my parents' generation and you hear about dads borrowing each other's Playboy magazines and stealing VHS tapes.
Mm,
There's clearly a limit to how much stimulation that can provide, versus real life and real interactions with women. So it seems like before there was much less opportunity to desensitize yourself and to kind of brainwash yourself, for want of a better word, than there is now.
hmm Yeah, I would agree with that.
But
I
I
think
wanted to,
also there
sorry.
seems to be, no, it's okay. I think there seems to be more, and I don't know if I'm biased because like men come to me with these issues. So maybe this isn't a lot of men, but it does seem like men have sex and they're not so much in it, like in the moment, because they're
Mm,
worried about something happening, or they're trying to keep up with the images that they consume every day, or they're comparing themselves or their own dick to that guy's dick in the porn that was 10 inches. Like, and it just seems like there's not so much an enjoyment and excitement about sex. It seems more like a stressful, pressure filled thing.
mm.
Um, and yeah, and it doesn't have to be. So that's what I try to help guys. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to change, is just like, let's put the pleasure back in and take the pressure out, because
Yeah,
just way too much pressure, especially on guys, I think.
absolutely. And before we move on from porn, I wanted to ask you if you think that it has helped open up the conversation when it comes between sex and break down some taboos.
If I could break down some taboos.
If you think porn has.
If
Yeah.
porn, wait, repeat the
Yeah.
question.
So do you think porn has helped develop an openness in conversation around sex
Mm,
and helped break down some taboos? Because, people are going to see more things now online than they would have done 20 years ago.
yeah.
So, for the couples that do want to have that conversation about sex and share what they like and discover what they like, do you think porn has some benefits there?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'm not anti porn.
Mm,
Just like, I think you can have a healthy relationship with it. I feel like a lot of men don't. And you got to do what's best for you and understand where you're at. But I do believe, and I have heard this, that it has opened the door for discussion and for trying things, for talking about that. But there's not much communication in porn, right?
no.
It's just like, oh, hi, are you ready for this? It just like goes right into it. So there's like no conversations going on. You don't know, how, so it's not teaching men how to converse and talk about sex, which is the most important thing. And the thing that takes the most skill build, like takes the most learning. Like you have to put effort into learning that just as you would any other skill of life. Um,
Mm,
so I think that it can open the door for wanting to try things. But what I find is that a lot of guys will just be like, hey, we should try this position. And like, they'll hardly be having sex with their partner, and their partner's like, what? Like, no, like, I'm not going to go from having sex with you once a month to like doing this crazy ass position, you know? So,
Right.
so the problem is people don't know how to talk about sex. So a lot of men who come to me are like, nothing's changed in the last year. And I told her I want more sex and I want more blowjobs. And I'm like, what did she say? Like, why is she not comfortable doing that for you? Like, what are her thoughts? And he's like, I don't know. Like, so it's just like this, and I'm not saying all men communicate like that. And, you know, it's not always the guy's fault, but there's a lot of just like, hey, I want this and let's do this. But like, you can't just go in with that and just say what you want. You have to understand, why isn't it happening now? Like, how do you feel about our connection? Like, are you comfortable? Do you enjoy our sex life? Do you enjoy having sex with me? To be vulnerable and ask questions like this, and ask open-ended questions so that you're actually learning about the woman in front of you, is really important to progress in your sex life. Otherwise, it's going to stay the same or get worse unless you're talking about it.
And I suppose that's where the difference between being a relationship coach and a sex coach, really, there's a big connection there when people are actually in relationships. Because I would imagine that if you're in a relationship where there's not a lot of sex, there's normally some non-sexual problem going on underneath that, which is why you guys aren't having a lot of sex.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important for guys who aren't in relationships yet to understand that, because it's like, if you can work on asking open-ended, like I mentioned earlier, asking open-ended questions on dates, and like being curious about the woman in front of you, and like being able to share your opinion, but also asking for hers. Like, if you get good at that type of exchange where you're vulnerable enough to share how you really feel about things, and curious enough to ask her what she feels, you're going to start a really solid foundation of showing you care about her, and she's going to feel cared for. She's going to care about you. And you'll have a much stronger dynamic going into a sex life, where then it's like, hey, we talk together. We're honest with each other. We're direct with each other. We practice that. Now, why wouldn't we do it with sex? Like, why wouldn't we do it? Why wouldn't we talk about our sex life the same way? You know, so for men to understand now how important that skill is, and to use it while starting a sex relationship, they're going to have the best, most confident sex relationships.
Absolutely. And you see this with a lot of couples where they struggle to have conversations and be open about the most basic things. I mean, some couples can't even honestly share their opinions about what restaurant they want to go to. So how do they have any chance of talking about anal or getting blowjobs, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of men have this ambition to become better at sex. And, you know, growing up reading things like Men's Health and the mainstream media, that was always every issue, 10 tips to be better in bed. How do you think there's actually a universal understanding of what it means to be good in bed, or is it really just not that simple?
That's a good question. Yes and no. I would say the things you can rely on most are talking about it, like actually talking about sex. And if you've never, like, say, like, you don't talk about it before you have it the first time, right? Most people don't. Sure. It's not the most natural thing. That's fine. But after you have it, to say something to her, like, okay, so it seems like you like when I go a little slower. Is that true? Or did I just make that up? You know, like, to ask a simple question like that, like, can open up a door to, like, hey, okay, like, we can talk about this, you know? And it's like, from the beginning, you're showing a comfortability talking about what you just did. Like, why shouldn't you be able to talk about something you just did? That's like, you know? So yeah, I think to be able to talk about it, to go slow and start slow, is very safe to say. And by slow, I mean warming her up, like teasing her body. Like, there's so many guys who just go right in, and they'll just go right, like, and even guys who are like, no, I do oral first. Like, you can't just all of a sudden go from like kissing her for 5 seconds to going down on her. You know, it's not a great buildup. I mean, you can do it, but most women are going to prefer you tease her. You like rub her inner thigh, you know, like you're making out with her. Then you pull back and like you touch her. Maybe you finger her. Maybe you like caress her boobs a little bit. And all this teasing, what it's doing is getting her arousal buildup. Because what most men don't understand is they can go 0 to 100 in terms of arousal. Like, a guy can just be like most guys could just get turned on right away.
Mhm.
And most women cannot. It takes some time. So for them to go right down on her, it's kind of like this awkward intensity feeling of like, oh, I'm like not close yet for him to be down there. Like it's not, and that's often when it takes a little longer and it's just not the most arousing. So I would always encourage guys, like, take it slower. And then once you spend like 5 to 10 minutes at least, like touching all over her body, then go for something like oral or penetration. But it's going to get her more in the mood and more like craving you. And you want a woman to get to the point of like, she's ready for you. Like she wants you in there. Like she's craving. Like that's such a better feeling than for you to just be like, okay, I'm going to go from kissing you to like going inside you. It's like not the best transition. So try to work with her build up, I think is a good tip for most women. And then of course there's women who just like to be spontaneous and like bend over and they're like, just, so.
But I think that comes more in a relationship.
It does. It's not I don't know what's going on today. I know there's like some of that, but so yeah, I would say going slow and then talking about it. And I'd say another thing is, being prepared to know how to react to something that might happen that you'll be nervous about. So like if a guy has experienced ED a couple times, like be honest with yourself before going into the date in case you're worried about sex happening and just say like, all right, if ED happens, what's my game plan? Like, how can I react? And to give yourself a game plan and tell yourself, here's how I'll specifically react. Here's what I can say and here's what I will do. It takes a lot of pressure off because now you're like, all right, even if that were to happen, I'm good. It's not like you're don't obsess over it. You're not like trying to plan for it to happen, but like just even doing it now, like get in your head, like, what am I struggling with? And what's the worst case scenario? How can I react to that? Is going to give you a level of confidence so that that's not on your mind weighing on you when you're eating dinner with her. Like,
right.
The date. So I think that will really help guys to be more present when they're having sex, which is going to make them much better in bed.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of mindsets do you think men need to take into the bedroom? Because I think there are different frames that you can use when having sex. Sometimes when you're in a relationship and it's very passionate, you feel like you want to possess that person. When you're being very dominant, you feel like you kind of want to take over that person and own them. Whereas, in a first sort of few interactions, you're kind of saving that for later, So what do you think are some more healthy approaches to take into the bedroom? Is it perhaps focusing on her pleasure?
I would say no, because I think too many men are like obsessed with pleasuring her. And it comes from, I think it can often come from an ego place of like, I want to make sure I can please her and that my dick is big enough for her. And it's like, it's actually a lot about him. Like it's not really about,
just his validation. Right.
Yeah. There's a lot about the validation. So I would encourage guys to go in with the mindset of, I'm going to have fun with her and we're both going to feel really good. And not forget about him. Like, don't forget about yourself, because often when men totally discount their own pleasure, they experience things like delayed ejaculation, where they will be with a woman and over time, just obsessing over her the whole time, they forget what really gets them excited and then they can't get there.
Right. So it's kind of like being in your own head, but in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't like obsess about her pleasure. I would encourage you to get her off first. I think that's always a good rule. So going back to being a great in bed, like get the woman off first, just be safe and do that. But yeah, when it comes to, cause that's like not only like just because, oh, she's the woman, just get her off first, but because how a woman's body works is like, once you get her off, she's going to be internally and externally, like so much more like prepared down there, like for not just wetness, but like actual like preparation. Like, so like with all the blood flow going down there, like she's going to be hyper aroused to be able to accept like you going deeper, and her body's going to want that at that point. So when she's like really aroused and she's in that place where she like just came and she's most likely able to have more orgasms, like that's the best time for you to go in and penetrate, is after she's come at least once. Like she's going to enjoy it so much more, and you'll enjoy it. You'll probably feel a difference, when you do it before versus after she orgasms. So that's a good rule too.
Yeah. I called up a couple of my female friends before this call to get some
Nice.
ideas, and we were having a little conversation. This is my opinion, and she agreed. I think that women are able to experience much more pleasure overall in sex than men.
Mm.
What do you think?
I think men can. They just don't experiment with themselves enough.
Okay.
I think I think that maybe for the orgasm, a woman's orgasms can be a lot longer, right? So we can feel more pleasure when it comes to that point. But I think because I have some clients who they experience pleasure like as a full body thing, and they try out toys, and they have their partner touch them different ways to test things. And this is like a client, I'm thinking of a specific client who's been with his partner for a long time, and they're in their 60s now, but they have the best sex life, like in terms of how he explains it, in terms of frequency and like exploring and getting kinky and trying things. Like, but he's very much like, oh my God, I love when we try it. Like, we're going to try it in the woods, and then we're going to slow down and we're going to do this role play here. And like, he has so much fun, like planning different things. That's like part of the pleasure. And then when it gets to sex itself, like he uses a toy, he has her do certain things. So like, he's actually putting a lot of effort into it. And I think that guys often think, oh, I just penetrate and that's all I got, instead of trying like different things, like the dominance like aspect that you mentioned, or like a role play, or like having an idea to like, oh, let's do this out here. And like, let's just make out for 20 minutes and like try not to like go anywhere and see what happens. Like, like testing things with your body to see how you respond and what feels really good. Because there's so much more than just penetration.
There's a whole Pandora's box. And this is why I always think that sex is much better in a relationship, because you get the time to go and explore those things and have those conversations that, you might not even ever get to the end of your bucket list, but within 6 months or a year of dating, then you've done things that you would never dream of doing with somebody you just met.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes time to build some trust there, but I mean, I've personally done that with someone after like a few dates, and like had a really great sex life with them. And we explored a lot, and like we had so much fun, and it was just a fling. Like, it wasn't a relationship.
Yeah.
And we just had so much respect for each other. We had boundaries, like, and if you can do that, and if like, cool, like it can work. Like, it doesn't mean you have to be in a long-term relationship to have like a thriving sex life either.
Well, I think it just requires that communication and that openness that most people don't feel comfortable doing, especially with a short-term partner. I was reading a book recently that is probably not appropriate for YouTube, but in the BDSM community, people are very open and will negotiate what's going to happen before it happens, right? So, and they're doing stuff that is potentially even dangerous.
Yes.
Whereas, vanilla people, we're afraid to even talk about something completely harmless and, very safe, really. But we're afraid because there's a taboo of talking about that, and we've only been on 3 dates, or she goes and tells a friend, that I am a freak who wants to do it in the woods, or,
Yeah, that's, I always admire that about BDSM, because it's like, there has to be so much communication, and it makes the sex feel so safe. And so like, you don't worry about anything, and you don't like, it's like they're the least judgmental type of people too, because it's just like, hey, you're safe here. Like, the goal is safety, especially as a submissive. It's like the submissive has the control, because it's like, you say a word and it's all over. It's like, so there's a lot of communication and specificity that we need more of as yeah, in general.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one thing that's a little bit unspoken is chemistry. How much of a role do you think chemistry plays in what makes good sex? And do you think there's anything that you can do to create more chemistry with your partner?
Mm, that's a good question. I think there's always a certain amount that's there or it's totally absent. Like sometimes I
Mhm.
don't think you could just create it if there's zero. But that's my personal opinion. I would say when you're more vulnerable, you connect on a deeper level where there's trust involved. I think that often can create a newfound attraction for that person because it's like, wow, they opened up to me, they shared this with me. There's like safety, there's trust, and that sort of builds on chemistry. But I really think it goes back to all novelty being a chemistry fueler. Like if
Mm.
you, whenever you introduce something new or share like a secret, there's going to be like this, ooh, I just learned this about you. Ooh, I like didn't know that. It's like whenever there's like, that's why mystery creates desire. And then when we share new things, it also opens us up to like attach to that person on a deeper level. It's why, partnerships after being together for so long, it's like, oh, I could never, like, we've been through so much together. Like we have such a deep love, and it's like, they explain it because it's like, we've talked through so many things, you've shared so many secrets. But yeah, I think that for chemistry, it can be opening up more and also holding back a little too, like also
Mhm.
keeping some mystery and by keeping mystery, it can mean just like, not seeing each other every single day or going out every Wednesday with the guys. And that's always guys' night. And like, she's never invited, like something where it's like, okay, that's your thing. And I'm never there. Like what goes on at guys' night? It's like, there's like some sort of mystery that's keeping you kind of desiring that person.
Yeah, and I think men could learn a lot from women about creating that mystery. I think the men that watch my channel are a little bit more in tune with this, but for a woman, she's able to maintain the illusion that she doesn't even shit for 2 years while living together. And, she comes out of the bathroom mysteriously in lingerie and
Never
smelling
fart, we
of
never poop.
perfume. Exactly. And, us guys, we're not so good at keeping the mystery alive. But I think that's definitely something that we can do. And I think that clothing, on a date, dressing up for your girl on a date night is one of the ways that you can do that
Mhm.
because she's like, oh, who is this man that I'm going on a date with? This isn't the same guy that was set playing Xbox in his cargo shorts an
Yeah.
hour before. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think we can learn a lot from women when it comes to that.
Yeah. I like that example of dressing, but even like I said, it could be like going out for guys' night. It could be starting like a side hobby. It could be like, it could be like catching up with friends, like on a call and going out. My boyfriend like will go out for these like hour-long calls with his guy
Mhm.
friends and like check up, like catch up. And then he'll come back and like he'll tell me a little bit about it, but it's like it's still like, okay, good for him. Like he has like his own life and his own stuff that like I don't know everything about him and every single thing that's going on. So it's like there's something nice about that. There's something nice about like not knowing every single thing. And there's also something nice about like opening up and seeing a side of a person that they won't share with anyone else, So
Mm.
I think both of those, the mystery and the closeness, to have a balance of that creates desire and that chemistry, so to speak.
I agree. I imagine that's a problem that a lot of young couples face at the moment. If they're living together and both working from home, you're around each other 24/7. Where is that space for that
Yeah.
mystery? You have to be very intentional about creating that.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. It's not easy. You have to think about it and you have to, yeah. It's like,
Yeah. And, when it comes to sex itself, both in a short term and in a relationship context, why do you think that some men are afraid of intimacy? They don't want to look her in the eye. They want to do doggy so they don't have to see her. They don't want to kiss and connect so much. It's very impersonal. What do you think they're avoiding there?
repeat the first part.
So I've noticed that a lot of guys seem to be afraid of intimacy
Mm,
during sex. They don't want to look each other in the eye. They want to do doggy so they don't have to see her. What do you think's really going on there?
yeah, I think it's, um, I don't know. I hear a lot from whenever I have calls with younger guys or take younger guys on as clients. And this means like guys in their 20s, like mid 20s around there. They will say things like, well, I don't want to take it further because then I'll feel stuck. And I'm like, why would you feel stuck? You know, and I think there's this feeling of like maybe like some commitment stuff going on. Like they can't commit, and they feel like if they do look at her in the eye, and like if they are really intimate during sex, it may give the wrong impression that they want to be with her, but they really just want to fuck buddy. So let's just be as non-intimate as possible. Like just turn her around and not make that eye contact. So I think it often has to do with them not knowing how to set boundaries around sex and just be like, hey, I really like you, but I really want to keep this just a sexual thing between us. Are you okay with that? Like if you are, I'd love to. If you're not, then, you know, I want to respect how you feel about it.
Right. Rather than doing this kind of halfway situation of like, if I look her in the eye, we fall in love. And
exactly. Like there's no spell that's going to, but some women do get attached and then guys feel guilty. You know, I had a client who felt terrible because he's like, she's coming on to me. And I'm like, you just got to be honest. Like you got to tell her, and that's okay. Like there are so many women out there who just want sex too. It's not that like, you know, but you got to do the best for yourself and for her. And that means setting a boundary and being verbal and specific about it.
We hear a lot.
You could have this type of sex you want after that boundary set. You know, you don't have to like
do a half-assed
sex.
Yeah. We hear a lot about hookup culture being unhealthy for women. Do you think it's also unhealthy for some men?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's so easy to hop from person to person today, especially with dating apps. So to constantly feed that and not like, I would just encourage men to get clear, like, who are you actually looking for long-term? And what is that woman like? Like, what are the top 3 things you need in a long-term partner? And to have them narrow it down to like 3 things and know that that's what they're looking for when it comes to a long-term partner. And anyone who doesn't have all those 3 things, they know that like, that's just going to be a casual thing or a short-term thing. Like at least have some barriers, you know, like otherwise men just like have sex and have sex and have sex. And it's all about sex. And then they get to an age where they're like, I wanted a relationship and now I'm this old and I don't know how to like talk to what, you know? So I have clients like that who come to me like, I've just been hooking up forever. And like, I didn't get clear on what I wanted and I didn't go after that. So I think there's so many distractions, and hookup culture can be just a constant distraction of just getting physical needs met. And you're not really learning from it. And you're not building intimacy skills or communication skills. And if you're not building those skills, you're not really preparing yourself for going into that long-term relationship that's going to be best for you. So yeah, I would say I would just encourage guys to have boundaries around like, what's okay for you right now at this point in your life. Like own it. Like if you're like, yeah, I want to hook up for the next 2 years and that's all I want to do. Cool. Own it. Like own that. Tell yourself, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to focus on a relationship 2 years from now. But for now, I'm going to have boundaries. And I'm going to tell the women that I hook up with that, hey, just so you know, like I'm only interested in hooking up right now. Are you cool with that? Okay, cool. And get that verbal agreement. That way you don't feel bad. You don't have to walk on eggshells about it. You don't like worry about things. You own it and you communicate around it. And that communication in itself is going to help you by the time you get into something more long-term because you're comfortable.
It seems like communication really is the magic word that keeps coming up again and again.
Yeah. It's everything. And the more you talk about sex, the more you tend to have sex. So if guys can get that in their heads to like, it's so important to talk about sex. Like I work with so many guys in like their 40s and 50s who are just like, man, why is it so hard to talk about sex? Like, why? Right. I'm like, well, was it ever easy? And they're like, no. And I'm like, yeah, you never started the skills. Like you start them young, you know, it will be much easier. You know, if you have to rebuild habits and reshape a relationship after, you know, when you're 40 years old together, it's a bit harder. You know, you have to change a lot more, but it's possible.
I know some people look at our generation as degenerates who are always hooking up with each other and watching porn 24/7. But the positive side of that is that we are much more open about communicating about sex versus the older generation.
Yeah. But I really can see see hope for that with the younger generation. I hope.
Yeah, but it's still not always the easiest topic. And especially if she's a bit more shy or she's a little bit more conservative about those kind of things. What are some good ways you think you can open up that conversation? Some good talking points to get started?
I would say that, and this is for a guy who's just dating someone.
Or yeah, like, early stages of relationship, maybe they've had sex once or twice. Not quite sure where it's going yet, but they know it's going to continue for now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's always a nice transition to make some sort of like sexual, I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but like a joke. Like, you know how like date 3, you're kind of like, if things are going really well, there's some chemistry going, you're being sexy to each other. And it's like, and then you say something like, oh, well, like I can't wait I was thinking about making out with you today. And she's like, oh, really? Like, blah, blah, blah. And you're kind of just like being playful about just expressing things you actually were thinking about or things like you want to do to her. Mm-hmm. Even that is a clear communication. It's just done in a flirtatious way. If you were thinking like, oh man, you know what I was fantasizing about before? And then she's like, what? And she's all into it because she's into you. And you just you're like, oh, doing this to you. And she's like, oh, maybe we should make that happen. That's usually the trajectory of how things happen when two people are really into each other. And I think even that is a form of being direct and sharing something and also being open to rejection. It's a bit vulnerable, to be like, because you don't know how maybe you don't know how she's going to react if you tell her you're fantasizing about a certain thing. Yeah. So to get comfortable, being a little uncomfortable by talking about sex is the way to go, because just know it's not going to be super comfortable if you've never done it. And if that's okay. It's with everything else, so you just got to put some practice in, take it one step at a time. And then when it gets a little more serious in the relationship, maybe that conversation sounds more like, hey, I just want you to know, I really love spending time with you. I think our sex is amazing. How are you feeling about us? How are you feeling about our sex life? And just start it there, simple, but to the point,
Yeah, I heard something, James Sexton, the divorce lawyer, he's kind of been doing the rounds lately.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine.
Oh, really? I don't know. Maybe you've heard this. And I think it's more of a joke than advice, but he says, if you want to do something kind of kinky and dirty with your partner, what you have to do is say, hey, baby, I had this dream last night where, I was tying you up or whatever. And then if she says, oh, God, how gross, you go, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Just to read her and see what she thinks about it.
Yeah. I must have had some cheese last night or something.
Yeah.
When it comes to exploring kinks with a new partner, do you think that it's a similar kind of principle of just openness and conversation? Well, what if somebody feels more taboo about their desires? Do you think they should still feel comfortable and open about expressing that with them? Or do they think they need to wait a little bit longer and build a bit more trust?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the relationship and how open you've been with each other so far. I think it also depends on how intense the kink is in itself. Is it something that's really is it a pee fetish, right? Where you want to pee on your partner? That's different than you want to kiss her feet in the bedroom.
Right.
It's kind of a level up, right? Whenever there's body fluids. Well, that's not true because then there's spitting, right? Oh, can I spit on your body? That's maybe not as intense as sucking her toes, right? But it's subjective too. You don't know. But it's tricky because there's variations where some people would be she might be totally down for the toe sucking and then think the spitting is disgusting. Whereas in my mind, I think spitting is more
more vanilla, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, more vanilla than the toe sucking. So it's
everybody has levels in their minds,
Everyone has levels in their minds, yeah. And I think just for a couple, for someone to be as open to just be if they really want it in the relationship, saying something like, hey, I really have been fantasizing about this, and I'm wondering if it's possible, like, for you to be open to doing something with it, like to taking part in it with me, or even if we can maybe meet in the middle and like do something less. You know, if she's like totally like, if she's like, no way, you're not sucking on my toes, like no way. I can't do that. Then maybe you say something like what about it, like if I massaged your feet like during sex, and I just like grabbed and like was like holding on to your foot and like massaging and like putting it near my face. Is that okay? You know, and sometimes there's a way to meet in the middle to the point where she might even eventually be like, okay, you could suck on my toes. Like, it's not that big of a deal, you know?
Right.
But if you can at least have that conversation and be able to be honest with each other, like allow her to say no and be okay with her saying no. And also, you know, hopefully finding the partner who's willing to find some sort of agreement and some sort of, hey, I won't do that, but like, I would do this if that would help. And like, if that would turn you on. Cause yeah. And I think you'd find this type of partner by communicating early on and seeing how receptive they are to your communication. And then, you know, if you have someone who you could really talk to and who's willing to work things out with you.
Yeah. And sometimes those things develop over time. The more your relationship goes on, the more you understand yourself, you realize what you do and don't want to explore and what you are and aren't comfortable with. But I imagine that can be a big problem in a relationship. Luckily, I've never had this where, you know, some people's desires and kinks, although they might seem unusual to somebody, that can be like vitally important to their sexual life, right? They don't want to be in a relationship. If I can never do this, then I'm always going to have this desire that's unfulfilled. So that must be a difficult part to navigate when the other partner is just like, no way, never doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why it's a good reason why like BDSM communities exist, or fetish communities, because then you can find those kinds of people who are open to that and who actually enjoy that, right? Like that's the best case scenario. Or it's a matter of just having the conversation pretty soon, like a couple dates in, where it's like, hey, like, I know this is a lot, but this is like really important to me.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, but I would say to find communities and find those, you know, that's a good place to start. But I think a lot of it has to do with confidence too. And ways ways to just like, I guess not everyone would be willing to meet in the middle, because there's certainly people where it's like, I need this. In which case, if you need it, it's often because like you need someone in that community who understands the need. And
sometimes you don't want to do things with somebody and knowing that they're kind of compromising doing it, you know, because you want the other person to feel fully in the moment with you and fully enjoy that with you, not be like, oh, fine, okay, you know, I don't really want to do this, but if I have to, then I'll keep you happy. That's not really the same, is it?
Yeah, it's not the same. And there are even some relationships where they open up the relationship to allow their partner to have that fulfilled by someone else.
Yeah.
So that's also an option. That's not easy for most people, but that's an option. Some people do, and it works.
I just wanted to go back to confidence because I wanted to ask you about this, but I skipped over it a little bit. You know, for the man who doesn't experience ED, he doesn't have any kind of performance issues or anxiety, but he's just not super confident in bed. You know, maybe he's a little bit worried about how his body looks, or he just has some stuff going on. What can he do to improve his confidence in the bedroom?
Yeah, he can, I think first, like acknowledging the things he does, like the memories he's had with women from the past. You know, David Goggins calls it mental cookie jar. Like
sex cookie memories.
Jar. Have a sex cookie jar where you have memories of not even necessarily sex, but like involving sex, involving women. Like, what are you really good at? Like, what was an experience that really made you feel good? Like, we all have like a few memories, maybe like 3 memories of our lives where it's like, I was most confident when I did this thing. And sometimes just reminding yourself of those wins when it comes to women and your sex life and what parts of your body you really like and feel good about. It just takes like a little reminding before going into a sex encounter to kind of boost that energy a little bit. And sometimes that's all it takes. Like I have clients just like pull up notes and I'm like, before, not on the way to the date while you're driving, but like before the date, like just read through some of those things and just remind yourself of, hey, like I've had some really great experiences. Like I can have more, and having that more like abundance mindset instead of having fear, or even instead of just going in like, oh, I'm not great, but like, yeah, you have something to bring a woman. You have something unique. Every guy has something unique to bring to the table. And I think there's a lot of guys who forget that today. They're like, oh, I have to be in this shape. I have to be this tall. I have to have this much money. And if I don't have these things, I'm less than. And that's not true. So find the things that make you feel really good about yourself and remind yourself of those things so that you keep that energy within you and you showcase it.
Yeah, I have two things to say to that. The first one is that I think the internet and online content aimed at men has really overemphasized this idea of hypergamy, that women are always looking for the tallest, richest, most ripped, most successful, high status man possible. And as soon as the next more appealing one comes along, then they skip along. They totally miss out this idea of, well, falling in love, attraction, things that are unspoken. And the fact that a woman can be attracted to you and fall in love with you for your character, not just these attributes that come on paper. And I think for those guys, I don't know what you think about this, but I think they just need to get out there and have more experiences, because for me, it's not just stacking a cookie jar of wins. It's also reflecting on what has happened in the past in terms of, especially in the early stages of dating, when I'm trying to, think about what am I looking for now. I'll think, well, I didn't really think that girl was my type, but then we kissed and we had amazing chemistry and I never would have guessed. Or, maybe it would have been better to wait till like the second or third date to sleep with her and allow things to build a little bit more. And you learn so much from your own experiences, but only if you actually reflect and realize that you can learn just from yourself just as much as you can from listening to somebody or, other people's ideas of what good sex and good relationships mean.
Yeah. Yeah. And that you can actually change from there. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were talking about what can he do right before he has sex if he only has like a little bit of time.
Oh, well, it's a good point as well. I like your idea. I think by then it's almost a little bit not too late, but you're doing something very short term then. And
yeah,
I think confidence is quite a long term thing personally.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. And I think like to what you said, to learn from every encounter, like I have a lot of clients where things don't go well with their wife or with a woman they're dating. And I'm like, okay, well, something happened. You fell into a conflict. Like, what did you learn from this? Like, or what did you learn from saying that to her that was a mistake that you shouldn't have said? Like, what does that teach you? What does that tell you about yourself and where you're at? Like, I always try to ask them questions so that they're like, okay, that was still valuable. Like, even though that wasn't what I wanted to happen, I still took something away from that and learned a lesson. And now I'm going to be more mindful of it moving forward. So yeah, I think confidence comes from, getting out there, getting hurt, having a variety of different experiences. We're not meant to always have great experiences with every single person. Otherwise, like we wouldn't end up with one person. It's not that everyone ends up with one person, but you know what I mean?
Well, I wonder that about people that do end up with one person their whole life. Not to discredit anybody that has had that experience, but I always think, it's kind of like you've got to buy one bottle of champagne for the rest of your life. You might want to try more than one glass of that champagne before you buy the bottle for your life. And I do find it hard to think, well, you've had so few experiences with other people. How do you really know that this person is the right one for you? And obviously they feel that way, and I don't want to discredit that. But as somebody who hasn't taken that path, I always question the validity of that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just like, I just lost my thought.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I think I romanticized that when I was 16. And then once that relationship was over, I realized that wasn't going to be me. But,
right. At 16, we're like, I'm getting married to them.
I know.
And then your mom tells you you're not, and you get in a fight.
Well, 26 and still no wife, but that's all good.
I wanted a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been lucky that I would say most of my experiences with women have been very positive and have been encouraging, even long-term relationships that have ended. But I do also encourage guys that if you've had a bad experience, don't let that burn you and scar you. You know, if you think of yourself as a man and you think that you're strong, just brush yourself off and get back out there. You know, it's like falling over during a run. You don't cry about it. You just have to get back up and start running again. And maybe
Yeah.
learn, don't tread on that rock again.
Yeah.
But you have no choice, really. Otherwise, you're just going to miss out on the most beautiful things in life.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remembered what I was going to say. I think it's like a big part of confidence too is doing what you say you're going to do. Like actually follow through with your own word. And if going back to what I said earlier, if what you're telling yourself is you want to find a long-term partner, but you keep acting as though you just want to be casual because it's easy in the short term and you're just having sex with this girl, even though you know it's not going to go further, like, what are you telling yourself you really want? And then what are you doing? So you're going to lose confidence every time you steer away from your own word. And I think to have goals as a man, I think it's so important to have goals and to follow those goals and like really stick to them and be disciplined about them. Because then at least like it doesn't even have to do with women. It could do with your fitness or your work. Like what are you really have something to chase in life? And that determination and that discipline is going to attract so many good women to you. And they will respect you and they will want you. And you won't have to think about, all this bullshit of like, how do I keep them into me? You're just following on your own path and you're sticking to it and you're staying the course.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. Before we wrap this up, as I mentioned, a lot of my guys are very into self-improvement and they want to read. Are there any books that you would recommend to have a better sex or relationship life?
I always recommend Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski.
How's that spelled?
It's actually spelled COME. But that's a great one. It's really going to open up men's eyes to female pleasure and anatomy. I personally love, it's right on my desk right now, Sizzling Sex for Life by Michael Castleman. It's basically it's like, I call it my sex Bible because it's like, it just has everything. It has like, it teaches you about like PE and kinks, like BDSM, like female pleasure. Like every chapter is like a different thing where you can learn a different topic where you can actually be educated and learn something. So I like that one. Sexual Intelligence. Yeah, Sexual Intelligence is another good one. Those are good. Those are pretty solid educational reads.
Well, I think if you read those three, you're probably going to be more knowledgeable about sex than 99% of the population.
For
so
sure.
It's a good place to start. And especially if you listen to this podcast, probably 99.9.
Yeah.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I think it's been super interesting. And I don't think there's too many conversations like this out there for men at the moment. So I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to do this.
Oh, me too. Thanks so much, James. I appreciate it. I loved being on and sharing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Gent Z podcast. Next week, I'll be joined by John Garfano of 40 Over Fashion. You can subscribe to Gent Z on your podcast platform of choice to receive that episode as soon as it drops. Until then, remember to always be a gentleman.